Hi guys, welcome back to the story. Let's begin. The camp felt colder, even with the sun warming the treetops. Spottedheart padded silently through the clearing. She couldn't help but hear the hushed whispers and suspicious glances tossed in her direction. No cat had forgotten about the outburst with Twilight Stride. Though no punishment had been dealt, the message was clear. Step out of line again and there would be consequences. But it wasn't just her. The entire camp carried a heavy air, something that was weighing down on them. RiverClan cats had settled into ThunderClan like ivy on stone, slowly and quietly, but now impossible to get away. Crabstar and Grasswhisker had moved into Snakestar's den. The leader himself barely was seen anymore. Whether he was keeping peace or just keeping quiet, no one dared to ask. Still, in the bitterness and rot, life moved on. Bee Breeze was healing well. She still limped, but the fire in her eyes had returned. One of the brightest moments is when Honeyfur's daughter Twigkit became Twigpaw. Spottedheart watched from the back of the clearing as Snakestar's voice, hoarse but steady, called the ceremony. Twigpaw stood tall beneath the high rock, eyes gleaming, her tail high. Her mentor was a very smart she-cat, whose fur was mostly dark but had a bit of red going down it. The pride in Honeyfur's gaze brought a rare smile to Spottedheart. Despite everything, despite the RiverClan's stench in the moss and the coldness of the medicine den, the rage that still caged in her chest, some things were still good. As the camp began to settle for the evening, Spottedheart slipped away from the crowd, making her way towards the tree line. The scent of herbs and the weight of her hidden work sometimes pulled at her. But before she could vanish into the forest, a low voice stopped her. "You're still smiling even in a place like this." She turned. Darkwater stood in the shadows between two gorse bushes, his green eyes catching a little bit of the last light. "Twigpaw earned it," she responded simply. He nodded, stepping closer. "I saw her training earlier. She's quick." Spottedheart looked away, guilt filling her chest. "I shouldn't even be here anymore, though. It feels like with that last outburst, it's made things harder for the rest of ThunderClan." "You're wrong," Darkwater said. "You're one of the only cats who seems to care, and that makes you strong. And Crabstar's scared of that." She met his gaze. "That's not comforting." He tilted his head. "It should be." They stood in silence, the hum of the moon and stars around them. Then his voice dropped. "I've been watching Crabstar's patrol patterns. He leaves camp every few nights just before moon high, always with the same two cats." Spottedheart's stomach felt like it was twisting. "You're serious?" The Tom nodded. "If we're gonna stop him, we need to know how to strike. We can't wait forever." The she-cat looked back towards camp, almost like she could hear Twigpaw's laugh echoing. A spark of hope kindled inside her, burning low but steady. "Then let's end this," she whispered, and for the first time in many moons, she felt herself again. Not because she was healing, but maybe because she could finally figure out how to stop the bleeding at the source. The moon hung high in the night sky, casting a silver path across the forest floor. Spottedheart crept slowly behind Darkwater, their pelts almost brushing together as they moved beyond the ThunderClan border. Her paws were light, but her heart thudded out of her chest. This was real, and this was happening. They moved in silence, the trees eventually thinning as a familiar sound of the river reached her ears. When they emerged into the moonlit clearing near the riverbank, she could see them. 2 cats already waiting. One was a sleek senior she-cat with fierce golden eyes. Her tail twitched with impatience, but her stance was firm and grounded. Next to her stood a massive, broad-shouldered Tom with mottled gray fur and a single pale eye. The scar across his muzzle and flank told stories Spottedheart could only imagine. Darkwater broke into a small grin. Spottedheart, meet the ones I trust the most. This is Egg Pounce, my old mentor, and her mate, Reedclaw. Egg Pounce stepped forward, eyes scanning Spottedheart from ear to tail tip. So you're the Thundercat medicine cat who's been picking fights with Twilight Stride in the middle of camp? Spottedheart blinked, caught off guard. Darkwater snorted. She's not just a medicine cat anymore. Egg Pounce cracked a smile. Good. She deserves it sometimes. We'll need a little rebellion if this is going to work, more than just us. Reedclaw dipped his head respectively, his voice gravelly but warm. Heard a lot about you. Mostly him. He gave Darkwater a teasing nudge. Didn't expect the stories to be true, but here you are. Spottedheart felt heat rise in her cheeks under her fur. She dipped her head politely. Thank you. Both of you. This means more than I can say. And they're not the only ones. I've spoken to a few other cats, mostly warriors, too scared to act alone, but fed up with Crabstar's control. They're just waiting for the right moment. Spottedheart nodded. How soon? Egg Pounce answered. As soon as Crabstar slips up. He's bold but arrogant. He's hiding something. Or someone. We need to get him alone. Then we strike. But we'll need your help. Spottedheart nodded. Anything. You just tell me what you need. For a moment, they all stood together, huddled in a little council. There was hope. Darkwater stepped a little bit closer, his voice low, meant only for her. You're really not afraid, are you? Spottedheart turned to look at him. Of Crabstar? No. Of losing everything? Yes. Darkwater touched his muzzle to her shoulder, warm and firm. You won't lose us. And for the first time in moons, Spottedheart didn't feel alone. The air in camp was thick with anticipation, heavy like the sky before a raging thunderstorm. Crabstar's voice rang out across the clearing, sharp and commanding, as he stood atop the high rock, his tail twitching with excitement. A patrol will return to RiverClan territory to test if the waters are safe again. If the river is no longer poisoned, we will consider our arrangement adjusted. Spottedheart narrowed her eyes. Adjusted meant more control. The clan grew still as he listed the patrol. Spottedheart, Grass Whisker, Trout Eye, Darkwater, and Honeyfur. Gasp rustled through the gathering like wind through leaves. Honeyfur's ears flicked back. Her amber eyes flashed with panic. Spottedheart's heart sank. She knew her sister would be worried about Twigpaw, who was, yes, an apprentice, but still young, just out of kidhood. Leaving her behind in this version of ThunderClan was scary. Honeyfur gave a brief nod to Crabstar, her expression unreadable, but Spottedheart could see her jaw tighten. After the meeting, the patrol was given a final shared meal before their departure. Cats gathered in small, quiet clusters, sharing tongues and gossip. The tension hadn't left, but sometimes moments like this made it feel less hostile. Spottedheart sat with her sister Bee Breeze. I'm sure you heard, but I'm going, back to the Riverclan territory with him, Darkwater, and a few others. Bee Breeze paused, her eyes flicking up. I know. Why are you telling me this again? It's just because we're moving soon, and because I need something from you. The two sisters kind of glared at each other before Spottedheart was the first to speak. I need you to start spreading word to these cats, the ones we trust, very carefully. Bee Breeze's tail lashed. Are you sure this isn't him setting you up? What if he's loyal to Crabstar after all of this? Spottedheart frowned. He wouldn't do that. But the sister wasn't convinced. Bee Breeze let out a low hiss, quiet but seething. You don't know him. Not really. I know enough, Spottedheart said flatly, taking a bite from her rat. He's risking everything, just like I am. There was silence around them until the camp started to murmur and shift. Finally, Bee Breeze pressed her foreheads against her sister's. It was a soft gesture, one they hadn't done in a long time. Just don't be a fool, Spottedheart, she whispered. I don't want to lose you. Spottedheart closed her eyes for a few heartbeats. You won't. And if this works, we won't have to lose anybody else. She turned and padded away before emotion could betray her. The patrol was already forming near the camp entrance. Grass Whisker stood tall and silent. Trout eyes flicked. Well, he didn't want to make eye contact with anybody. Honeyfur looked over her shoulder once more towards the apprentice den. She knew that her daughter would be okay, but the thought of being apart saddened her. Then there was Darkwater. He was farthest away. Spottedheart walked over and sat next to him, but not too close. This was going to be difficult. She took a deep breath as they stepped through the bramble of the tunnel and out into the cold forest. She could feel a shift, and there seemed to be mist rising. The forest was unusually quiet as the patrol moved through the trees. There was a chill rising with the mist. Shadows began to stretch long and making weird shapes. Spottedheart padded in the middle of the group, her ear constantly twitching at the rustling of branches. Grass Whisker led the patrol, the Riverclan deputy. Her thick white fur fluffed up. She didn't speak much, she usually didn't, but every now and then she would look back with her icy glare, and it said more than words ever could. Spottedheart had seen that look before, a warning. She was probably judging you. There was also Trout Eye, who was a little bit of a smaller cat, must have just been made a warrior. His eyes were very big and round, and sometimes reminded her of a kitten still. He occasionally darted ahead and walked next to Darkwater. Then he would flick his tail at Spottedheart with a mischievous grin. You like her, don't you? He mewed quietly. Darkwater let out a low growl, not even turning his head. If you spent less time talking, we would be there already. Knock it off. Trout Eye grinned wider, trotting ahead with a few dramatic bounces. Touchy. Spottedheart said nothing. The fur along her neck prickled as she picked up a little bit of the conversation. She didn't like how loud he was being, or how accurate. Behind her was Honeyfur, who was staying a little more towards the back. Her eyes were dull with worry, and her paws shuffled as she walked, obviously lost in thought. And she knew what she was thinking about, her daughter, Twigpaw. The guilt sat heavy on Spottedheart's chest. She hadn't told Honeyfur everything. She couldn't. Not yet. They continued to walk until the mist turned into a heavy fog. Grasswhisker spoke up. We'll get lost in this. We need shelter. They wandered for a bit longer, moving slower. Trout Eyes finally spotted the entrance of an old, half-collapsed fox den. It reeked, but it was empty. And it was shelter. With some hesitation, the group ducked inside one by one. It was very cramped, barely large enough to fit all of the cats. They had to get pretty close together and could even smell some old prey bones. Grasswhisker settled into the far end, tail twitching. Lovely, she muttered, curling up, glancing at nothing. Trout Eyes plopped down near the center and sniffed dramatically. Ugh, I hope none of the ThunderClan cats brought fleas or ticks. Or they snore. Honeyfur said nothing, only curled herself near the wall, one eye kind of open, looking back at Darkwater. When Honeyfur joined, though, she decided to get up and let her sister be more in the center, and just so happened to be next to Blackwater near the entrance. They pressed their flanks close to each other and whispered, You okay? She nodded once, trying not to worry too much. But she could feel her sister move. Eventually, the patrol fell into an uneasy silence, the fog continuing to pass above. Somehow, despite the tension and the cold, everyone was able to fall asleep. She wondered what waited for them at the river. A quiet unease settled over the group as everybody woke up. The sun began to slowly burn through the fog, causing it to leave as they walked. It wasn't long before the scent of the river curled around their noses, though something else seemed to be present, something sharp, something rotten. Eventually, the River Clan camp came into view, but it wasn't the strong, flowing river Spottedheart remembered hearing stories about. The river that wound through the camp. Its surface was covered with an oily blackness that shimmered like crow feathers. Floating alongside the bank, she caught reeds that were swollen and bodies of rotten fish, lots of them. And not even the flies buzzed around the dead. Spottedheart wrinkled her nose, tail lashing. Star Clan. I've never seen anything like this. Beside her, Honeyfur looked nauseous. It smells like death. They padded forward in silence, no longer needing to question why River Clan had come to ThunderClan. But the horror had only just begun. Trout Eye, likely trying to break the tension, suddenly nudged Honeyfur with a playful flick of his tail. Bet you never seen that in a river before, he teased. Honeyfur shook her head. I'm not going anywhere near that. But Trout Eye, in a moment of bad judgment, gave her a stronger push. Don't be scared, it's only water. Honeyfur let out a yowl as her paws slipped, her body sliding right into the blackened river with a splash. The smell of oil everywhere. Within an instant, she vanished beneath the surface. Spottedheart screamed, Honeyfur! She darted into the bank, claws digging under, trying to scoop her up. But Darkwater was already gone. He had leapt face first into the river without any hesitation. The moments felt like forever. Spottedheart paced, trying to reach them, but having no idea where they were. Then there was a ripple. Two heads breached the surface. Darkwater grunted as he pulled Honeyfur towards the shore. His jaws gripping her scruffed, his eyes were wide and terrified, the black slime covering both of them. She coughed as Darkwater dragged her up onto the shore. She's breathing, he says, his voice shaking but firm. Spottedheart rushed to help her and began licking her ears and eyes and trying to get it off of her face. You're okay. You're okay. Honeyfur was still coughing and gasping. Her eyes found Spottedheart, and she held on to her. Grass Whiskers stepped forward, her eyes flicking sharply. This place is obviously still poisoned. We're going back to ThunderClan now. She turned without another word, but not before casting a hard, narrowed look at Darkwater. You might want to think twice about returning with us, Darkwater, she added, her voice cold. Crabstar won't be happy when he hears how much you care for these ThunderClan cats. Spottedheart's fur bristled. The implication was sharp and deadly. Darkwater met Grass Whisker's glare, but with his own. He said nothing, and instead turned to help Honeyfur to her paws. Spottedheart's heart pounded in her chest. There was no going back after this. Soon. They would have to act soon. The walk back to ThunderClan was very tense. Most of the cats, the RiverClan ones, already were walking ahead. Honeyfur still reeked of the poison, even when they made it back to camp. Inside the clearing, there was a commotion unfolding. They could see that Twigpaw sat trembling outside the medicine den. One paw lifted. Standing over her was Twilight Stride, flicking her tail with annoyance. It's just a thorn. Even kits in ThunderClan don't cry over such nonsense, the orange and black she-cat growled. If you want to be a real warrior, then act like one. Twigpaw whimpered, tears still in her eyes. It hurts. Before anyone could intervene, a snarl ripped through the clearing. You dare speak to my daughter like that? Honeyfur shot forward, her fur still wet and clinging with the poison when she launched herself at the medicine cat. Twilight Stride didn't even have time to brace and was knocked over. They both tumbled into the dirt, yowling. Get off of me, you miserable... Twilight Stride spat, kicking furiously. But that's when the chaos truly began. It seemed to set off a whole fight. Cats sprung into motion like springs. RiverClan warriors yowled in alarm, claws unsheathed. ThunderClan warriors lunged to protect Honeyfur. Snakestar tried to leap onto the high rock to restore order, but Crabstar pushed him out of the way. This is treason, RiverClan leader roared. ThunderClan will pay for this. Spottedheart stood frozen, only a heartbeat before she dove into the fight. She could feel a cat clawing at her ribs and scanned the battlefield. Eggpounce was defending Beebreeze from 2 RiverClan cats. Reedclaw was able to hold off an attack so she could make her way there, helping defend her sister and Eggpounce when she turned to see Darkwater alone. He was surrounded. Crabstar had leaped down off of the high rock and latched onto him. Crabstar was no small cat and collided with Darkwater with crushing force. His claws raked against Darkwater's shoulder, blood everywhere. Darkwater growled but tried to hold his ground, kicking as hard as he could. But the strength of Crabstar was like a storm, one that had crushed weaker cats many times before. Spottedheart gasped. She couldn't see this happen to the cat she loved, so she ran across. Darkwater let out a strained yowl as Crabstar pinned him to the ground. You're nothing but a traitor, the RiverClan leader spat. You're weak, just like your brother. Leave him alone, the cat screamed. Beebreeze was the one to first knock Crabstar over, just as Spottedheart came to help with the final push. It took every amount of energy to get them apart. She was able to knock him into a rock. And then she sank her teeth into his scruff. Fur went flying everywhere. It was so hard to tell what was happening, but then suddenly, Crabstar stopped moving. It seemed as if the fight was over. They backed up, expecting him to rise again, but he didn't. The whole clearing almost went silent. Crabstar still didn't move. That's when Twilight Stride limped forward, her eyes wide with shock. He lied, she whimpered. He's always lied about how many lies he's had. He's gone. There was gasps. Grass Whisker's eyes widened as the truth hit her like a blow. Her voice broke out as she called, "River Clan, stop. Stop this fighting. We take Crabstar and we'll go. No more blood needs to be spilled." Snakestar, seizing the moment, leapt up atop the high rock. "ThunderClan stands united," he yelled. "Let this be a new dawn for peace." Slowly, the River Clan cats backed away. Some of them were in disbelief, but others seemed to be relieved. Twilight Stride and Grass Whisker began to gather Crabstar's body. Spottedheart stumbled to Darkwater's side. His breath was shallow but steady. She knew she would begin to work on him soon. "You saved me," his voice low. She nuzzled him and looked up to see Egg pounce and Reclaw wink at her before walking off. Darkwater continued. "If you want to be a medicine cat again, I still want to stay here with you. Forever." Spottedheart froze. A medicine cat couldn't take a mate. It dawned on her that she would have to make another choice. If she wanted to be a medicine cat, she couldn't be with Darkwater. But this whole fight was so she could have her place back. Her eyes looked up as the stars twinkled. "Oh, StarClan." Just as the scene fades to white. Thank you guys so much for watching the whole thing. Let me know what you thought of the story. It's really fun that this whole story was inspired by a semi role play I did that got cut short, and then I was able to kind of put my own ideas and what I thought could happen, and I've enjoyed it so much. This is already so long, so I had to kind of stop it here, but I am open to a second part in the future. Just comment below because I think it could be really interesting, seeing what happens. But yeah, thank you guys so much again, and I will see you guys all next time. Bye, guys.